way too long since we've had a chat about plant-based eating and nutrition. And I know that since we last talked, I've learned a ton. I did the 8-week challenge with Nimai Delgado, who's a vegan bodybuilder. I did that twice. And then I went back onto some meat during lockdown, and then I went off again. And then now I'm at like 95% or something like that. I've learned so much through that. And then at the same time, you've gone through and you did your coast to coast training and a bunch of recovery.
Yeah.
You've had an injury since then, which you've been recovering from.
Yeah.
So I know a lot about your background in nutrition and eating and sports, but can you tell the audience a little bit about where you're coming from in terms of how you've become a plant-based nutritionist?
Yeah, sure. So my journey started when I was very young. For me, it's been an ethical, values-based decision. So I was about 8 years old when I decided not to eat meat anymore. So vegetarian. I was a really active kid. My parents were, of course, always worried about where I'd get my protein and stuff from, but I never had any issues. And then it was back in, I think about 2016, I got into trail running. I signed up for the Coast to Coast mountain run section. And that's the same time when I decided I should be swapping to vegan. Again, it was more values-based. And that's where I really started learning more about the nutrition aspect. I had beliefs that all of my protein was coming from the dairy that I was eating and the eggs that I was eating. So I had to learn a lot about that. And then stayed vegan. And then in 2018, I trained for Coast to Coast. For any of you that don't know what that is, it's a 2-day, 243-kilometer multi-sport race. It's road cycling, mountain running, and kayaking. So it's big time endurance. It's full on.
I was watching you online while you were doing it, and I was just thinking,
oh yeah,
I'm glad that's not the sport I've chosen.
I think I was, during it, I was like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? And obviously when you're training for something like that, nutrition is absolute key. You've got to get your nutrition right. And that really led me into learning much more about plant-based nutrition, and especially plant-based nutrition for athletes, endurance athletes. I absolutely loved it. I spent every day researching, trying. I was in Facebook groups for endurance athletes, asking for recommendations. I definitely went more towards the whole foods stuff. I tried to not use the gels so much. I made up my own gels.
What do you mean? What is a gel?
So gel is basically, it's a tiny little power pack of energy that endurance athletes use. When you're doing big endurance stuff, your stomach can get really upset. It doesn't particularly like eating big foods, and it's hard to eat on the bike or when you're running or kayaking. So gels are often used to get the calories in, the instant glucose in, to fuel. So I made up my own instead with things like maple syrup and some molasses and that sort of thing.
Okay. So how long was it before the Coast to Coast that you had switched to being vegan?
So I switched in 2016.
Okay.
So it's about 2 years vegan, and then I started training for Coast 2018.
Now, I'm just kind of curious, was there something comparable to Coast that you did when you were vegetarian?
Not so much to Coast. It was more just being, when I was a really active kid, I did a whole lot of sports. I did gymnastics, I did inline hockey, I was a very competitive horse rider. I was a Canterbury rep for New Zealand champs for that. And that's pretty full on as well. So still very active, a different sort of fitness with probably slightly different nutritional requirements.
Less pure endurance, more all-around athlete.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, part of the reason I'm asking is that what fascinates me about my own journey and experiences going plant-based, going far more plant-based, is everything is better. The recovery is better. My energy level is far better. My at the gym, my strength, my lifting is far better. I get injured less. I'm not sore for nearly as long. There's just so many benefits. Now that's strength training and more bodybuilding type sports. I don't do endurance sports, so I have no comparison there. But I have a very strong comparison. So basically for me, it was lifting, daily gym for a year. And right about halfway through was when I was like, I give up. I'm not recovering. Life is hell. I'm getting injured all the time. I need to try.
Something's not working.
That was my motivation to try plant-based. And you were the motivation was like, hey, you know, you want to improve your recovery, give it a go. See if it works for you. For some people, it's awesome. For some people, you know, you may not notice a difference. It was a massive difference. Within 2 weeks, I felt like a different person. And I was really surprised how fast that happened, right, for me. So yeah, I'm really curious if you saw a similar significant difference pre and post when it came to things like recovery and energy and digestion and general body feel and sleep quality and mood. And I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's much harder for me to judge because obviously I haven't eaten the meat for so long, so I have no comparison there with meat aspects. But what I did notice, especially training for Coast to Coast, was that I was starting quite a bit less fit than many of the people in the training groups I was with. When I first trained for probably the year before, I was in Europe and I was much more of a junk food vegan than a whole food plant-based vegan. So when I first started, I was unfit. I was recovering from a broken foot. I had about 15 kg to lose to get down to my race weight. So I was working really hard, and I wasn't complaining nearly as much as quite a few people who were in the training groups I was with the day after our training sessions. I didn't get the DOMS. On a good session, I'd go for a 3-hour run and I'd come back and be like, let's do that again. You know, I just had that really quick recovery. Yeah, and that was really obvious.
Energy as well?
Yeah, on and off, yeah.
To me, one of the things that really impressed me is that I was ramping up my training, and I'd go to the gym and I'd lift for an hour solid, and my absolute limit, my ceiling of recovery was about 3 days a week, maybe 4. And I was just flat out sore. The next day I'm just laying in bed going, kill me, you know, kill me now. And to me, that was growth. I was seeing progress, but the cost and the effort, it was like climbing a mountain with your fingernails. You know, it was so difficult. Every handhold was difficult. And then when I made the transition, I immediately jumped to 6 days a week. And I usually forget to take my rest day because I don't need it. I don't, that recovery element was just the most significant thing for me. The place that we should probably start is talking about just the general context of different eating styles here. Because most of us in the Western world have grown up, probably in worldwide, have grown up with a kind of omnivore diet, meaning meat is fairly central to every meal in a sense. And then the vegetables tend to be on the outskirts, and maybe there's a carb, some bread or something like that.
Yeah.
But without that meat-based protein, we almost feel like it's not a meal. It's maybe a snack.
Yep.
Right? So that's the worldview that I grew up with. And now I'm exposed to all these other ideas. One is, which I'd love you to sort of explain and sort them out. So there's vegetarianism, there's veganism, there's plant-based, which is kind of a new thing. There's pescatarianism, and what else is there? Whole foods plant-based, WFPB. That's a new one I'm hearing.
Ultimate,
so what are all of them?
Yeah, sure. So probably, I mean, this has really come in the last couple of years as plant-based in general has increased. You've got all of these varieties, and it's, I know for a lot of people it can be super overwhelming and really confusing because you're getting different definitions for different things come through. As a baseline, so you've obviously got your omnivore diet, then you've got your pescatarian, which is they don't eat any red meat or chicken, they just eat fish and seafood, and then the rest is plant-based. Your vegetarian is no meat, it's just eggs and dairy, and then your basic vegan is no animal products at all. Vegan in general is often related to the ethical side of things. So vegans go a step further and incorporate in their lifestyle. So this is where the plant-based has come in. And that's where you've just got your focus on the diet aspect of it. So a plant-based diet is effectively a vegan diet, which can or may not be healthy. And that's when you've got your whole food plant-based diet. So this is where you're getting into the healthy aspect. Whole foods, you're trying to stay away from the processed stuff, from all of the oils and the vegan donuts.
Okay. So this goes back to, this is a good time to ask the question that came up earlier, which is, what is a junk food vegan? Because when I think vegan, I'm like, well, of course that's healthy, but it's not, is it?
Absolutely not. You can be very unhealthy on a vegan diet. Some examples: Sour Patch Kids are vegan, Oreos are vegan, and now they've just come up. You can get vegan ice creams, you can get vegan pretty much anything now. And yeah, they're just loaded with processed foods. They're high fat, not healthy kinds of fat as well. So you can definitely be really unhealthy on a vegan diet. So if you're looking at veganism for health reasons, you want to be looking at whole food plant-based.
It's interesting. I have a little bit of experience with that personally. So from November through to January last year, I did my first 8-week plant-based vegan eating challenge with Nimai Delgado, and I did really well. I was tofu, black beans, TVP, textured vegetable protein, which is like soy that you can turn into a mince, like a chorizo mince, great for tacos and stuff, very flavorful. I love my spicy. So I got to have a lot of fun learning how to take plants and avocado and make tasty things. And then I did another 8-week challenge because it was discounted by 50%. I'm like, okay, why not? It's doing well. Let's keep going. But I got lazy. And I got lazy because I discovered vegan meats. I discovered the made hamburgers and, oh, look, it's like a sausage and it tastes like a sausage, but it's not. And that was just so convenient. But what I noticed, because I track everything nutritionally in Chronometer, and I saw very quickly there was an interesting shift. When I switched from, say, black beans as the base of my meal to like vegan hamburgers, the protein went down and the fat went up. Like really noticeably. Like for that second plan, my fat was over target. Now I was still hitting my exact calories, so still getting the same amount of energy, but I was struggling to hit the protein numbers and the fat was just blowing past my target. What was really interesting was that even though my calories were the same, so you'd think, right, you know, I'm still going to keep shredding. I stopped. My body stopped. And I don't know what the mechanics behind that are, but I was eating 2,200 calories in both ways, and somehow my body just stopped processing it in the same way. And I just plateaued. I stopped shredding. And now, and then there was lockdown where I went completely off the rails, and then I'm back on again, and I'm just watching that steady, consistent, fast progress happening again. It's just, and I'm back on whole foods. You know, I'm eating real things, a whole fruit, the whole, like very little processed anything. And I find, you know, the more I practice cooking things like a giant pot of beans and rice, or a nice Thai curry, or a big pot of chili, or some penne pasta that's based on lentils, and you just have these great meals. I just cook a giant meal. once every 2 days, and I've got food for the week. So basically there's no value to having those processed meats. Before they were convenient. Now it's like, it's not even worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And since it's clearly sabotaging my progress, I'm just going to cut it out for a while and see what happens. I've been really happy with that. So when you say junk food vegan, that basically means highly processed, sugar, high fats, vegan meats. So technically there's no animal protein and there's no dairy, but it is still far and away from healthy.
Still very, very unhealthy. So I probably got to sort of 80 to 90% whole food plant-based when I was training. And it is a case if you get out what you put in, like someone who is doing 100% is bound to see a bit more benefit than someone who's only 80%. But at the same time, for me, sometimes I enjoyed a vegan burger. You know, sometimes I went out eating and I enjoyed some pancakes from a cafe. So I think, you know, if you do get up to that sort of 80%, no, you're not going to get full benefits unless you're 100%, but you can still get so many benefits and you can still enjoy stuff on the side as well.
The diet that I would describe that I'm on now, I describe it as plant-based because plant is the foundation, right? The beans, the rice, and so on. But I also think of it as 95% because I will put an egg on top, or I will have a small tin of tuna once in a while if I'm rushing out the door and I just don't have anything. So, but I'm very careful to do it consciously and aware rather than just automatically. And I found that that's a really nice balance. My body feels like it's getting all the benefits, but I'm not stressing myself out psychologically when other stressful things are happening. I'm like, yep, that's fine. But I'm not going to go, you know, hit like Burger King or something like that because I know I'm going to regret it later.
Especially the more you eat healthy, the more your body rejects that sort of food too, and you just feel crap.
Yeah, that's a good point. My personal reason for going plant-based was primarily my own health. I'm fully aware that there are all sorts of things tied to heavy meat consumption, heart disease, diabetes, tons of different health conditions. My family is reasonably healthy, but growing up in America, you know, it's like most people are expected to have a heart attack at about 45. It's that bad. And you look at the obesity rates. Yeah, and I'm like, you know, I don't want that. I want to be here for my kids someday, right? You know. And on top of that was just I want to feel good. I want to look good. I want to be able to use my body for a long period of time and not get out of bed groaning and achy joints and all of that. And that was what really motivated me to start exploring it, was I could feel my body going down that track. Just constantly aching, constantly getting injured. Injuries take 6 months to recover from. And I just wanted to know if there was a better way. And that was what really led me down to exploring this. And I'd say for those of you that can relate to what I'm talking about, like you feel a bit stiff and sore and low energy, this is something very important for you to explore, because most people that transition to plant-based say that there is a lot of benefit on the recovery side. If you're into sports, whatever, running, weightlifting, you'll recover much, much better. I understand that most endurance athletes are now plant-based for that very reason.
Absolute. The last 4 years worth of Ironman World Championships, plant-based. One of them since birth, one of them for about last 10 years. Now they're just dominating.
Wow. And I'm starting to see more and more of that in powerlifting. And recently more and more in bodybuilding, which is kind of boom, you know, like what's this about? But the movie Game Changers was quite interesting, particularly when you use it as a reference and then dig into each of the stories that they bring out and see for yourself. It's pretty amazing. But I can't find a downside to going plant-based, and so many
No.
benefits. I would almost suggest that if meat is the center of, if you're listening to this, and right now meat is the center of your plate, like it was for most of my life, you owe it to yourself to try to change that for a few months and just see what happens for you. If you feel 10 times better, that might be telling you something. If you don't notice any difference, fine. At least you know how your body's reacting to it. And that was the way that I decided to approach it last year. Was like, I'm going to do an experiment. It sounds like it's going to be hard. I might not enjoy it. You know, I'm kind of clueless what's, you know, going to taste good. And I had all sorts of doubts, but I also knew I was pretty much pushed into it. At that point, I was like, I'll try anything at this point, because I don't want to go on steroids and drugs and get surgery. And I mean, the amount of money that I'd spend just on healthcare, you know, was mind boggling. And I'd just be trying to, you know, band-aid the problem.
Exactly.
So highly recommend it. And then of course the long-term health benefits too. Pretty much everyone I know who has lived a long and healthy and vital life at some point went primarily plant-based. And you can see this in a lot of the statistical studies regarding, I think it's called the Blue Zone diet.
Yeah, Blue Zones, yeah.
Which is primarily plant-based with a little bit of fish. And then of course you've got Japanese who live the longest and have the healthiest general diet, very, very strongly based on plants. So yeah, look around. You know, you're the one who suffers if your health goes off the rails. So make sure that you're learning all you can. Yeah, definitely want to be healthy when I'm old.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be doing coast to coast though. I just want to tell you.
We'll get you there, Mike. We'll get you there.
Someday.
Yeah, I'm really trying to sort of nut down my nutrition for myself, because I'm now dealing with what looks to be an autoimmune arthritis potentially. So it's going to be really important for me how I manage that, and if I can manage it through a diet that's low inflammatory, then hopefully I can stay away from some of the bigger drugs, at least for a long time, and continue to be able to do the sports that I want to do. And the diet's going to play a massive role in that.
Yeah, there's a concept that I've grown quite fond of. Food is medicine, right?
Yeah.
That concept. And I realized that the more I look at the American diet and the American health problems and the way that people approach it, they medicate it. They don't change any of their lifestyle things. They medicate it. But when you go into the online, to the Facebook forums and so on, which we'll talk about some of the communities you can join later, they are full, absolutely full of stories. I had my third heart attack, so I decided to go plant-based, and my life has totally changed, and I lost 50 kilograms. And it's like, wow, it's just story after story after story after story. And it's too much to ignore.
Yeah.
Really too much to ignore. So I'm glad that I began exploring this and embarked on this. And it's one of the things, I'd say in the past 10 years, this has been one of the best things I've done for myself, was just starting learning about it, right? And I'm still just at the tip of the iceberg. So let's go into one of the biggest challenges that I had at the beginning of my shift, my exploration of going plant-based, was, what do I eat? You know, like I had a very clear idea of what breakfast was. It was always, you know, eggs and maybe some bacon or ham, and then maybe a little bit of cheese. And oh yeah, I can have a piece of fruit on the side. But when you took half of that away, I was like, is it an apple? Is that my breakfast meal? Like I really didn't know. What do you do for breakfasts?
Yeah, so my breakfast is winter. My key one is going to be oatmeal. So I make up oatmeal. I chuck in a whole lot of different nuts and seeds for protein and the omegas. Often berries on top, which are really, really good for you. Soy milk ups the protein again. So that's usually my winter breakfast. Summer breakfast is often a smoothie, different vegetables. You can chuck oats in there as well. Again, soy milk. So they're kind of my two. I need to get back into tofu scrambles. Tofu scrambles are really good as well. And you made was it you that made an omelette recently out of chickpea flour, or was it someone else?
I have had an omelet made. One of the ways that I began exploring this, because I really didn't know what to do, right, was I'd go to vegan restaurants. And there
Yes.
happens to be one down the street from me called Gorilla Cafe, which is in central Auckland. And it's a great little cafe, and they have a full breakfast menu. And so I would explore chickpea scramble and tofu scramble and different muesli bowls, and ask questions. And the staff and the kitchen staff were really, really friendly and really helpful. I've almost convinced them to start a cooking class for me, because I'm like, I really want to learn how to make
That'd
this
be
stuff.
awesome. It's
Yeah,
good food there, right?
yeah, it's good food, and more than that, it's fun because you want to love your food.
Yeah.
Food is very important to me, right? It's one of the places I get a lot of enjoyment. So it was important to me not to sacrifice that kind of connection that I have with food. And I found that I was really worried about that, but it's still worth a try. I've actually found my connection is deepened, because now I have not just an appreciation for flavor and creative ways to make dishes, but I understand the nutrition coming from each ingredient. So I do something like you right now, where I'll make a breakfast oatmeal, and I know exactly what's in it. I know what seeds, I know what nuts, I know what's in them, I know what fruit I'm adding today. I might add some protein powder to beef it up, or I might even create like a whipped tofu, which gives it like a yogurty, dense texture, like a smoothie bowl. There's so many things you could do. Throw in some frozen blueberries and toss it in a blender, and you can create something that's like ice cream. There's no lack of flavor,
No,
right?
absolutely not.
And
Or
now
options.
knowing that, like when I look at my breakfast now and I compute it up in chronometer, I'm like, wow, look at the micronutrients, the vitamin A, the vitamin C, the zinc, the niacin, it's all there. Whereas it was looking pretty lame and sad when all I was eating was eggs and bacon.
Yeah, the variety's not there. You get
Yeah.
That's something I learned as well when I started to get more into the nutrition stuff and I started experimenting more. The variety of foods that I was able to cook, and therefore the variety of nutrients that I was getting, was just amplified considerably. It was really good to experiment with.
So there are a lot of different breakfasts that I still need to try. The tofu scramble, the chickpea omelets, they look fantastic, and they're so creative in terms of what you can put in them. Pancakes.
Yeah, I make chocolate protein pancakes. They're really good. One of my favorites.
We were talking the other day about making homemade muesli bars, nut bars with
Yeah.
seed, which can be very, very good for protein as well. But now you just got a nice little portable breakfast. I can go out for a run and have it while I'm looking at the sunrise or whatever I want to do. I quite like that. Another category, French toasts, I've seen. One of the big ones in Nimai's program was the smoothie bowl.
Yeah, smoothie bowls, of course. Yeah.
Yep. So they'd take some coconut milk and some frozen fruit and toss it in a blender, and then pile fruit on top of it. And it just looked like a giant dessert, but it was so nutritious, and the calories were just right. And it was one of those really great realizations that food didn't have to be boring.
No.
Now, what do you do for lunches and dinners? Do you treat them as the same?
Yeah, my lunches and dinners are often do it interchange them a lot. I've kind of got a base. I do lots of different stir fries. So a lot of sort of tofu stir fries and mixed veggies, and I just do different sauces. At the moment, I'm eating a lot of homemade satay sauce, which I'm absolutely loving. Curries is another one. Again, it's really simple, just mixed veggies, tofu, and different sauces, whether it's like your green curry, red curry, or your Indian style curries. Do that. What else do I make? Chili. Chili's really good, and it's such an easy one. And it can be as simple as, if you're used to making it with mince, you just swap that mince out for either lentils or beans or the TVP. Other than that, exactly the same, real simple. Sometimes I'll have that in a wrap with salads. Buddha bowls are really good, like roast veggies, roast chickpeas, some baked tempeh or something, stuff like that. Yeah, they're probably sort of my main ones that I sit at. A lot of things I often recommend to people is if they've got favorite dishes, like they might have butter chicken or something, go to Google and just put vegan butter chicken, and you'll get heaps of recipes come up, or how to veganize or plant-based diets, if that's a word, your favorite meal. So you don't have to start learning all of these brand new meals. You can just take what you already know and turn it plant-based. And for some people, that's a much easier way to get into it.